But yo, you know how you get those posts that talk about that where everybody shares pictures of books or albums that inspired them? I want to use this segment to segue into the all-decade build. And I want to start with the inspiring. I'll start with the inspiring book. I think every week I'll give you an inspiring book, and that's going to go forever, just like albums. So I'm not going to give you my all-timers, but I'll be giving you the reasons why I chose them as inspiring books. So some of them will be all-time, some of them will be just, immediate, recent ones, whatever, you know what I mean? Or there are all levels to this stuff. But the inspiring book of this episode is a book that I give out to every student I ever teach. And it's the first book I ask them to read. It was a book that was taught to me, that was given to me. And when I was being taught to be a teacher, specifically at a law school in Mecca by Savior Knowledge, I took this teaching from him and to give out this book as a first primer. And that was As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen was one of the greatest books to describe the mentality that man is the sum of his thoughts, that everything that a man thinks, so shall he be, that a man can only be guided by his own thoughts and is victim to the thoughts that he has that he cannot control. And that's the core of what a knowledge of self begins with. And so many of the things in the premise of As a Man Thinketh really goes back to the Dhammapada, the ancient Buddhist text, the Dhammapada. But that is more aphoristic literature, sayings of understanding written beautifully. So it's not always a primer to a lot of students. They're not ready for that kind of language and needing a language that is immediate. So As a Man Thinketh is always that book that I always throw out there. And I didn't do the research, and it's not coming to me, but there's a lot of MCs that have mentioned similar thoughts that are inspired or in line with As a Man Thinketh, right? Because it is correct. And probably the most famous I'm thinking of right off the head is, I'm forgetting the Impossible in the Wu-Tang Forever album, where RZA says, from a single thought, everything appeared here. That right there is a true understanding that is exactly in line with As a Man Thinketh, and of course, in line with its predecessor, where it was mine, the Dhammapada. But that's the inspiring book. This is a book that if you email me, Sunez97@gmail, I'll be glad to email it to you, a digital copy. But it's also a book that is free on the web if you just do a Google search, in all the forms, EPUB, PDF, you'll find it. And if you want a hard copy, you can get one easily for about $5 to $10. It's a very small book, but its weight has nothing to do with its size. Now, talking about inspiring books, and since we're talking about, I'm about to get into the all-decade build, let me give you something that goes into the decade. And it's a personal work. I think it's a great work. I think it's one of the great experimental albums that even the group didn't get to continue on with it in the fashion that they could have, but it's still there, and I think that they probably will be, in the future. And I hope so, because I love, when legendary artists, they begin to experiment, not just give us the drugs that we crave, but, give us something new. And that album is 2010's Wisemen album called The Children of a Lesser God. Wisemen is the crew out of Detroit, led by Bronze Nazareth, the late, great Kevlar 7, remembered in perfection. And those brothers led that group with Philly, Salute, my big bro, June Mega. Who else? Salute the Kid. Philly, at the time, was part of the group. And that was the main core. There were some other people, but that's the main core. And definitely the main core that made great music in the early part of this decade. And this was their second album. Their first one was in 2007. So Bronze Nazareth released his debut, Great Migration, which is one of my favorites of all time, and it would have been an easy layup pick if you know me as far as inspiration albums. But I picked Wisemen because this is the album that I chose to review and begin my path to coming back as a writer in this decade from out of the dark ages. I think albums inspired me, and I think one of the albums in the very late part of the dark ages that gave me a clue that hey, this stuff will get better were the works of Bronze Nazareth and the Wisemen. But also, I think in many ways, Cuban Links 2. And I'm saying Cuban Links 2 not because I think it's a great record, but I was a writer who had trouble getting published for what I really wanted to try in the 2000s. And that's also a reason why I consider it the dark ages, just even as a personal note. And one of the things that was very important to me was to see like legends that made great works be able to come back and make great works, you know? That ends up being very inspiring, you know? So I was in the game. Can I come back in the game? And Cuban Links kind of inspired me because, you know, Cuban Links was not the insight-driven record or progressive thought record that Immobilarity was trying to be. And, you know, me and my producer, we talk about Immobilarity and how badly a fail that record was musically. And I couldn't disagree. I reviewed it back for an old website. If you know, you know. Hooked.com. HOOKT.com. You know, and this is back when Immortal Technique was known for battling and not for making incredible political songs. You know, because its volume 2 hadn't come out yet. And, you know, the right? Revolutionary Volume 2 didn't come out yet. Right? But the thing about it was, recently I found out that Necro, who I don't really care for as an MC too much, I think he's just too close to the sound and the pacing and the style of his idol Cool G Rap. But as far as a beat maker, with his work with nonfiction and his solo work and his work given to others, always on point. And he remixed about 10 to 12 tracks on Immobilarity. You know what I mean? And I think that is my best proof right now to say that Immobilarity was not a bad record because of Raekwon. I'm just throwing that out there. Raekwon did his thing. He was honorable on it. He was really lyrical. But Cuban Links 2, and I'm thinking about this decade and the Crime Rhyme MCs, how influential the comeback of Raekwon. You know, we're going to talk about other albums that he had that were great in the decade of the 2010s, but his comeback begins with Cuban Links 2, where everything gelled. And the detail, the added detail that he gave that crime life was really what he added in Cuban Links 2. And I loved it, and I think it's important. But Wisemen, Children of a Lesser God. I'm going to quickly read this. I'm just going to read this because this review is so important to this decade for me. It's not flashy. It's really just a basic science on music review. I was getting back in and I wasn't comfortable yet to experiment just yet the way I had thought. And I just wanted to write a basic review. And this was the first basic one that came out really detailing what I thought. You know, if you can't detail the music the way you want to, then you can't create a body of work that is creative. You know, that has to come first, the science of music. But I said this. I said the flourishing of Wu discipleship is one of the greatest sights in the saga of hip-hop music. That the root takes earth when Bronze Nazareth is realized by the RZA in this revealing premonition that we will receive the innovations of versatile epiphany and expert expansion. After 2006 classic debut, and I still think so, The Great Migration, Bronze presents himself as the focal point to introduce his extended Detroit roots with the whole Wiseman crew's debut of 2007, Wisemen Approaching. A debut album that played as an addictive continuation of Migration, stripped down hardcore beats with more rugged verses from Bronze. To listen deeper to Wisemen approaching, one could see that the great lyricists and unique voices lurk within the fold, as brother Kevlar 7 and also Philly. 3 years pass, and the waiting of the fan and the hustling of the artist is revealed as a diligent study of debuts that deepened in listener worth and MCs that have made the craft a profession. The sophomore effort of Children of a Lesser God must be understood as a success of mastered experimentation fortified by developed technique. With Bronze, Kevlar 7, Philly, and Salute, joined by members June Megalodon. I can never say that. I love that he just goes by June Megalodon. In Illa Days, there's a reduction of versatility and flow and steadiness of track tempos as they seek perfection with exquisitely developed mid-tempo rolling breaks that they accent with congas con dumbao, and soaring soul wails, all laced with seasoned rhyming. In an age where hip-hop seems scarred by lack of skill as much as exploited gimmickry, the Wisemen have an album that charges through with innovations of sincere musical exploration and a band of MCs that all have incredible mastery for syllable coupling and the imagery projection of their survivalist blues of enlightenment. Like the Wu itself, each member of the Wisemen are brothers before they rhyme, so their convergence on the mic has a completely unified sentiment that's compelling. You know, as a side note, and for everything that's happened, I still think that they're all brothers, you know what I mean? For those that left and those that remain in the group. Bronze Nazareth is criminally unknown and garners the most respect merely as a great beatmaker. While this is as valid yet incomplete as understanding Michael Jordan as a great defender, there's no rest in the earned respect. The tracks add live instrumentation with a band guided by Bronze and Kevlar, with the emphasis on unique snares, roaring bass lines, and wailing vocals as if they are modern orchestrators with the spirit of Barry White in them. Whereas Wiseman approaching may be seen as dynamic sampling from Love Unlimited Orchestra to Candy Staten to Wonderful Effect, Children must be recognized as distinct orchestration. As this is the epitome of the Addicts album, the innovations are felt with constant repetition. Bronze's work this year, the year particularly 2010, has been with 60 Seconds Assassin's debut, Remarkable Timing, where much like RZA with Wu-Tang's 8 Diagrams, provided soundscapes that evolve with the inflections of the MC. 60 Second, more the soul-wailing orator of select terms like Greg Nice, was given hard tracks that isolated his verses like the title track, or fluctuate with him like the off-kilter breaks on Fizz Funky. With Children, Bronze, now with Kevlar adding on, offer hard breaks that ride with deliberate pausing that emphasizes the MC's rhythm and breaks. These live tracks have a lot of pausing in them. You know, it's very interesting. You know, I haven't heard anything like that since. The marriage of beats and rhymes is exceptional, and where we can understand the production advances. The Wisemen are all literally rhyming in mastered tri-pattern flow that often has a punctuated rhyme syllable as the fourth word note. So many tracks achieve this synergy. We can look at the Bronze-produced Corn Liquor Thoughts, where Kevlar, who has a gift for the wonderfully chosen word, takes the verse from Bronze, and then the isolated vocal hook begins, spin the cylinder, cyclical spitter, realer than lead spit at the White House pillars. And on that tri-pattern flow, the break invites itself right on time. The amazing verse is followed by Philly on the tri-pattern, also going in with laser daggers piercing your skin. The power to devour whole cities, oh so Philly. Got a fofo with me, my banks roll sickly. Pockets throwing up, regurgitating 50s. Long Beach iced teas chronic by the tree. It's all I need to rock an MIC. Leading to the most deliberate use of the tri-pattern flow by June. June, with a voice that has bass and command like the well-featured Big Rube, goes in penning the song title to begin the flow. My corn liquor thoughts, trouble I brought, liver than raw damage, you niggas fall famished, you know, and I don't do it justice, you know, because it's that baritone. That track is brilliant, with a swooping bass line like a car engine churning and the break propping it up while the soul wails musically support the intentions. And the tracks are where all this is immaculately attached. Kevlar is literally the next great musician. He indeed was. With beats and rhymes. His reworking on the Charmel cymbal crash use on RZA's Cream has all the signature of his young stylings. With beautiful soaring vocals that chime in like the illest zombie doo-wop group, the break has a marching crunch, while the Charmel's crimp cymbal crash shines like a light in the dark attic finally discovered. Every sample, every type of vocal, every snare, every break, every bass line has a plan that promotes the MC's intentions. And I'm going to stop there because this album, I just keep talking about it, quoting lyrics and going in on the album. It's got so much great stuff on it. It's got to be one of the sleeper albums because I think it's a great, incredible work of the decade. So I think it's a great segue to go into the all decade